It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 453. Tonight I'm joined by Ashgar. Grace. Kodra.
What year is it?
Tam.
Hello.
And Thalen. What year is it, Kodra?
I don't know.
I'm honestly not sure.
Okay. This week was a really long month.
It's 2020 part 3.
It really does feel that way. I don't know when it stops feeling that way.
I don't know if it ever stops feeling that way.
Don't say that.
I mean, like we're in this rut where 2019 permanently feels like it was last year.
I was watching through some random episodes of Actually the other day, and one came up that was clearly filmed during the early days, and they joked about how maybe by the time this gets out there, everybody will be like, no, it's getting better. No.
Oh boy. Yeah, I definitely remember extremely optimistic, like, we'll probably go indoors for 20 days and then we'll be back to work.
Yeah, we'll be back at work in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Yep.
I am thankful I had no problem getting my booster a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Apparently that's a thing. Like, folks are having trouble scheduling it.
Yeah, I was able to just, I literally went on and did Walgreens, the following day.
I think we scheduled on a Wednesday and we went in on a Thursday and got it and the flu at the same time. So
it's a little harder to get it for my son. For whatever reason, places don't have doses for a 5-year-old.
I was very smart this time, and I talked them into putting both of them in my non-dominant arm. Because last time they did it both in my dominant arm, and that wasn't fun.
Yeah, I also did that. The only downside of that is I tend to sleep on my side
exactly,
on my non-dominant arm, and so that was no fun.
The thing. Anyway.
But yeah, I no longer feel like I've been punched in the arm, so.
Yeah, it faded pretty fast this time. So maybe that means something. New Honkai Star Rail event.
Yeah. I've been playing Pokemon in Honkai Star Rail, and it's fun. I really just kind of love how all the events in this game are just a take on some other genre of games.
I do enjoy that when games have mini game events that are very clearly inspired by something.
Yeah, I mean, this one is definitely not pulling any punches about what it's referring to.
Well, it's really important that they're a good version of that thing, because sometimes they're just like a hollow, oh yeah, here's some member berries for this one game you used to play. But no, the Honkai Star Rail ones have been great. They are very competent takes on a genre.
Yeah, and this one's been I feel like this one is the most detailed yet. I appreciate that it seems to be striking a good balance between there's enough interesting stuff to do here, but also it is completely manageable to finish the whole thing well within the time that's allotted for the event. And I also, of course, love that all of these major events are permanent. So there's limited time rewards, but even once those are gone, you can still play the event, which I think is A+.
That's good.
Well, that was one of the biggest complaints that people had about Genshin, was the fact that they put in all this interesting content that no one could ever play if you didn't happen to be playing the 2 weeks it was available.
Right. And there's some really cool stuff in there, but yeah, then it just disappears. Whereas this is just going to be always around. And at some point, I'm sure it would be completely overwhelming for a new player, but also, good grief, what a great source of materials for a new player, too. So, but yeah, it's really fun. Like you get to go around to different zones and battle different enemies and collect them, and then build your team and go up against all of the different characters that you've met and battle their teams. And you have, a little group of rivals that follow you around and show up and inconvenience you, and it's really adorable. And yeah, like I love that the other players that you're battling are all characters that you have already met and enjoy, and they all have nice little banter to go along with it. It's just been really fun, and not so complicated that it's overwhelming, but also complicated enough to be interesting. So there's, I don't know, more than a dozen enemies that you can capture and use in your battles. And I don't even know how many of the little memory chips that you can slot into them that give them special abilities. So it's really customizable, and it was pretty fun.
So this is a JRPG. Is it using the same battle system as it uses for like its normal JRPG combat for the Pokemon stuff?
Yeah, pretty much. It's slightly simplified, but still essentially, the same kind of combat system, which I appreciate. I think because I didn't have to learn yet another new combat system. It was completely intuitive because it was the way I was already playing the game. But instead of controlling my own team, now I get to control a team full of, a warp trotter and some boss monsters.
So I am also vaguely curious. There is a post, a tweet on that Tam posted from somebody. Not Tam reposted to our group threads. The current Honkai Star Rail event is about how a woman with massive bazongas and short shorts learns a lesson about how the International Monetary Fund leverages debts against poor cultures to pick their bones clean of resources when they can't pay it back.
I mean, that is accurate, but not about the event. That is
Okay.
actually the main story quest.
Oh, okay.
That actually happens in the main story quest. And,
That's hilarious.
And those characters, are participating in this event.
Okay.
But yeah. The story this patch was it was something.
I'm so ready to leave Space China.
Yeah, well, you'll be happy that this one all takes place on Belghast, and they're starting to talk about the next planet that they're going to visit. So
awesome!
It's coming. And there's also the new character that's on the banner right now is from Space China. So the character quest is there, but the main story stuff is all happening in Belghast, which is great because I love all of the characters there, except Sampo. Screw Sampo.
Sampo's the worst.
But you get to beat him at Pokemon, so, it's all good. He's mad because nobody wants to play him because everyone thinks he's just going to cheat anyway.
Is he wrong?
I mean, it's accurate.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a fun event, and the main story was definitely something this time around. And I'm also just excited because they're starting to do the thing that Genshin has been doing for a bit, which is they're starting to double up banners. So the next banner will have a new character, but there will also be at the same time a banner with one of the previous gacha characters, which I am super excited about because I started playing after that character came out, and now I can finally have a chance to try to get her.
So banners being like these characters are available to you to roll for?
Yeah. So usually, every few weeks, there's one 5-star character and a suite of 3 4-star characters that have that are on the main banner. And
Yeah, I don't know why they call them banners, but like that's just an accepted practice within gacha games.
Yeah. And usually the 4-star characters will go into the like general pool forever, but the 5-star is a limited thing.
But 5 stars are also the rarest to get, so it's really encouraging the whole gotcha thing.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely
good
that.
luck having Eidolons unlocked on those characters.
Yeah, it's not even worth thinking about that if you're not just a ridiculous whale. But most of those characters are obviously also so good that just having them in general is worth it. And someone was doing the math, and I think if you are, I think you can get around 75 to 100 pulls during a patch, depending on whether you're paying at all or not. And the pity is at 90, so yeah.
Okay.
I have to say though, like there's a big difference between the way that they designed characters for Honkai Star Rail and the way that they designed a lot of the initial characters for Genshin. Like there were some stinker 5 stars in Genshin, and I don't feel like any of the 5 stars are bad in Honkai.
No, there's some that aren't my favorite, and there's definitely some that aren't as strong as some of the later counterparts. Like, I'm looking at Bailu, who is the first 5-star healer in the game, and is fine and has a lot of good qualities, but like Coffin Man is better than her in pretty much every way.
Oh, the Coffin Dude is the upgrade.
Yeah, Coffin Dude is actually super great because he has a cleanse to remove buffs from enemies and a cleanse that will remove debuffs from your allies. So that's pretty huge.
And also a field that like basically kind of lets your heroes heal themselves.
Yeah, and he'll auto heal anybody who gets to 50% health every other turn. So he just hands down more powerful than the other one. The other one's big bonus is that she can res somebody once a fight. But yeah, but now we have hope that if you weren't around the first time Coffin Guy was on the banner, they'll probably bring him back again.
That's exciting.
It makes me happy to know that if something is stupidly overpowered, it's not going to be limited to just the people who happen to be playing at the time that banner ran for a couple weeks. You might have to wait a bit for it to come back around, but you can assume that it will eventually. And if you really want to go nuts and save up for Eidolons, you have a couple tries to do that if you're willing to wait.
What's Eidolons mean?
So that's sort of the gacha mechanic where if you pull a character and they have this set of powers and this power level, and if you pull them again, then you can add a bonus of some sort. And this game calls that Eidolons.
I don't remember what they were called in Genshin.
I think it's Constellations.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, because I mean that's pretty normal for gacha games. It seems like just pulling a character once is not sufficient to have that character at full power.
Right.
There's grinding to do.
Well, and the nice thing is it's been pretty easy to like get Eidolons on the 4-star champions, and the couple that I have managed to get all the Eidolons on, like they start to feel like a 5-star character at that point.
Right.
Yeah. And it's a benefit of playing a gacha game near the time that it releases, because that pool of 4-star characters is much smaller, so it doesn't take that long for you to get enough to max them out.
Mm-hmm.
And the longer the game goes on, the bigger that pool gets, and the less of a chance you have of getting the one you actually want. But anyway, Pokemon and Star Rail, super fun, having a good time.
Okay, so this next one, I am confused because I keep seeing it show up in my timeline, and I am not sure if it is a desktop game or a mobile game.
It is not a mobile game.
Okay, Star Trek Infinite.
Definitely not a mobile game.
It is definitely not a mobile game.
Boy, the idea of playing Stellaris on mobile sounds like hell.
That's
I thought you were going to ask if it was a standalone game or a mod, and that answer is a little more complicated.
So I booted this up because I was like, I have to say, I started this earlier this week and I put it down, and I had a whole thing I was going to talk about on the show about this game. And in the last 30 minutes, I booted it back up, and everything I've wanted to say about it on the show is different.
Interesting.
Did they already patch it already, or did you just encounter some stuff you hadn't gotten to yet?
This game looks exactly like Stellaris.
Yes.
To an honestly shocking degree.
Yeah, looking through screenshots, every screenshot I've seen, I've been like, yeah, that looks exactly like Stellaris, except that character is a Cardassian.
Yeah.
Yep. You're mining minerals, you're creating energy, you're creating food, you're creating alloys, you're turning those minerals into alloys, you're building, this is Stellaris, at least, and the tutorial does not disabuse you of this notion. It's
well, the first hour of the tutorial does not disabuse you of this notion.
When they eventually say, hey, we've taught you what you need to know, now start playing this game. What you need to know is how to play Stellaris. At a super high level. Here's how you move a ship around, here's how you assign a scientist to a space vessel, here's how you build a mining station.
Yeah. And yes, it is doing all of those things. And in fact, the reason I put it down was because I was like, look, I've played a lot of Stellaris. Going in empire building and, exploiting mining and so forth is not what I come to Star Trek for.
Right. It's about exploring strange new worlds.
Right. Yes, I see where this story ends. Or at least I think I see where this story ends. It ends with me figuring out the best way to make the most number of pops and win. That is what Stellaris is. Stellaris is get all the pops. Do everything you can to get pops. Pops win you the game.
Yep. End
of story. You may do various different ways to have all the pops, but really it's about how do you have all of the pops. And again, that's not Star Trek to me. So I booted it up again because it's the game I had available that I can lightly play while we're podcasting, and it popped up with victory conditions. And that's interesting. The thing about Stellaris is that Stellaris has always been about have all the pops.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be, but it has been. This isn't that. There's a lot of sliders in these. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes sliders about what things have what weight. One of the things that Stellaris uses as endgame scoring is military strength. At least for the Federation, that is not something that gives you score.
That's appropriate.
In fact, the number of systems you control as Federation is pretty low compared to base Stellaris. The score contribution to number of pops is pretty low. Economic strength and technology level are pretty high. Number of colonies is relatively high. And so I was like, that's a slightly interesting thing. And then there's a little thing that I noted at the bottom of the victory screen that says the power that first takes 12 civics wins the game.
Oh, interesting.
Which is not a victory condition that makes any sense in Stellaris.
Well,
No, it really isn't. You can only have 3 civics ever.
Right.
Right.
So I was like, how does that work? If you diplomatically fold somebody into the Federation, you gain their civic.
Aha.
Oh, I really do want to play this differently. Like, that changes my game plan in a pretty big way. Where are those envoys? And so I was like, okay. So and so I had this thing that's like, this game that looks very much like Stellaris is tuned differently enough on the back end that at least as little as I've played it, feels different. Or at least seems like it could feel different. There is probably an optimization strategy that says, screw all that, take over everybody, go all war, win, or whatever. But
I was about to say, I do worry that we are still too much in a Stellaris system where you not existing or you being small and starved for resources means you're never going to win that. You're never going to win those ways.
Sure. And interestingly, I don't have a problem with that. The Federation is not small. The Federation just doesn't go out conquering people, which is the only real way to get more territory once your borders cross people in Stellaris. Like, it is possible to assimilate a smaller culture, but it's relatively difficult, especially compared to just sending in a bunch of warships and taking them over, which I'll note does not get you their civic, as far as I can tell. Forcefully taking them over does not net you their civic. So, like, already that feels structurally different just from a tuning perspective. And then I recruited a governor and a spy. In Stellaris, a governor is a buff that you place somewhere. Like, yes, they've got a name or whatever, but really, you have a place, you say, you recruit a governor. The governor is basically a portable buff that you place wherever you want.
I thought the council one reworked that significantly.
Say again?
I thought the council expansion reworked that significantly.
Maybe?
I gather that it did, but yeah, I haven't had a chance to play since that patch went in. So, but yeah, it sounds like in Stellaris, like, leaders in general work very differently than they used to. So who knows?
Yeah, like the and again, I played so much Stellaris that I'm just like, yes, summon governor, plop governor in place. You know, maybe that's different, but broadly, I'm not expecting that. Whereas, so I pulled up a governor in Star Trek Infinite, and I'm like, where is this guy? How do I attach him to a planet, etc.? I know how this game works. And then I was like, oh, that's a ship.
Oh.
My governor and my spy are ships. I send them on missions. Huh. That is also different. And it's subtly different. Like, you're still sort of sending the governor to a planet, but as an instantiated entity in the universe, there's a bunch of things there that become relevant, like, hey, maybe you want to protect that guy. That is an asset you can lose in combat, or in, like, it has to travel places. That means there's travel time. There's just a bunch of things like that. And on top of that, every faction has, like, you can't make your own faction, which
Sure.
But
Like Crusader Kings in that respect.
Yeah, but also, each faction has a mission tree. So rather than you unlocking mission trees and competing with everybody else, you have a specific mission tree for your faction, and those have some pretty significant influences. Like, complete this and get anomaly discovery chance plus 20% and anomaly research speed plus 10% for 10 years, plus a whole bunch of research.
That's pretty nice.
Which is which is nice. And like, that is the kind of thing that you might get in Stellaris. But because the missions are generally randomly generated in Stellaris, they're not something that you might intentionally work for. You're just sort of going to lean into it if it comes up and you happen to be well suited for it.
Yeah.
And that really shapes the kind of things, the kind of thing you want to do. I mean, why, yes, I do want to make a bajillion science ships.
It does sound like, while this game is perhaps more than the tutorial lets on, the answer is it's still kind of just a mod of Stellaris, but it's a good mod of Stellaris.
Yeah. And that's kind of the thing that I find interesting, right? Like, yes, this game is by and large Stellaris with a skin and some background mechanics tinkered with to encourage you to play it differently.
But that's totally fine. Stellaris is an overwhelmingly large game. It can be played many different ways, and only some of them are supported. So
yeah,
I absolutely am excited to play it based on what you're saying, because yes, I think it would be cool to play Stellaris a different way. There are so many levers I don't pull in Stellaris because they're bad.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that the Stellaris approach, like one of my long-term frustrations with Stellaris has been, yes, there's all of these things I could do, but really I know the right answer.
Well, Stellaris patches and changes itself pretty frequently. It's just they haven't made it so that they've always tried, but never succeeded in making it so that pop doesn't win.
Yeah. And basically there's two ways to get more pop. Are you doing one of the two things that gets you more pop? Cool. If not, bye.
There's actually a lot of ways to get more pop in that game.
I mean, there's colonization and there's conquering.
Otherwise, you're out of room for pop.
Yes, I will agree. Like, you have to be either colonizing or conquering, sure.
Right. Like, those are your two options. You are either colonizing as fast as you can, or you are conquering as fast as you can. And then there's a bunch of stuff that's like, how efficiently are you making pops in the planets you have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which affect how
you want to maybe build some pops and grow some pops and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Robots be good.
Robots or clones. Don't forget clones.
If you didn't start out as clones, robots are good.
I mean, I kind of assume robots are the silicoids option, where you can just colonize anything.
No, those are rock dudes.
That also exists, but I mean just, as an organic, making robots, because you don't have to wait for robots to, be born. You just have to make them.
You build them.
Yeah, rocks still need to be born.
They eat rocks and not, farming foods, but
they
generally care not about irradiated planets.
Sometimes
they care less.
They care less. They are able to live basically anywhere, but they reproduce very slowly. However, there was a hilarious time where they were out of band the best way to generate pops, but they fixed that problem. Because it used to be there was a way to play rocks where when you would colonize a new planet, you would basically just hurl a meteorite into that planet, and it would ruin the planet, but you could dig up some new rock pops from the core.
You can still do this, to be clear.
You can still do this. They make it cost a lot of resource. So
the exploit was that you could, after moving all your pops away from this planet, this would be an uncolonized planet.
And you
could smash another meteor into it and get more pops that way.
And you can still do that. It just costs influence to abandon a planet.
Yes. Basically killing this as a strategy. Smashing meteors into planets as a general strategy, not terrible, quite frankly.
Yep.
But smashing meteors repeatedly into one planet to balloon your population out of control doesn't work anymore.
Well, especially if the planet isn't really good and you don't want to use it, well, might as well just grab 2 pops from it. This does make rock population multiculturalism hard, because then everyone else is looking around at these destroyed planets.
Details.
The other thing that this does that is structurally different from modern Stellaris is that at one point Stellaris had 3 different ways of traveling the galaxy, and now it has one. And the one they chose was hyperspace lanes, because in a game about colonization and conquering, you need to have like it needs to be defensible. You need to make bottlenecks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they got rid of the two types of transport that didn't involve that. This one chooses warp, which is about as straightforward as you might imagine, and basically says, in a lot of ways, your actual borders are a suggestion. It's relatively easy to just warp across somebody's borders if you want to explore past them. And certain ships, like the spy ship, just ignore closed borders.
I'm going to get my old man yells at Cloud on and say that I really, really, really liked wormholes, and I'm sad they're gone.
Well, they still exist. They're just not your default way of travel.
Technically, so does warp, because jump drives exist.
Yes.
But, it was a hilariously unbalanced state of affairs when these were actual choices you needed to make at Empire Creation, like how weapons were not a thing you should have had to make a choice about at Empire Creation.
Yes.
And the game is better for removing them. I'm just still, I can still be bitter about it if I want.
Yeah, that was sort of the problem, is that, you didn't choose warp? Why?
I mean, there were compelling reasons to choose hyperlanes or wormholes, or to a lesser degree warp. And then as the game went on, there were not compelling reasons to be stuck with the one you picked initially. In particular, warp basically ran out of its good parts after the very beginning of the game. And hyperlanes, if you had it late, meant that nobody could ever kill your ships, because it was the only one that did not have spool up time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then you were actually bound to the map, I would think. But did it matter? It
kind of didn't matter. The amount of time it takes a ship from warp to go from system to system was so much longer than hyperlanes that it really didn't matter. Because in modern days, hyperlanes do have that spool up time before you can jump. That wasn't true back then. You had to get to the edge system, you were gone. Despite having to go system by system, it was still one of the fastest ways to get around, but not the fastest way because wormholes were broken.
But yeah, this sounds cool. I should give it another try, because I do like playing Stellaris, but Stellaris is kind of stale, so maybe this works.
Yeah, that's kind of where I ended up landing on was, I'm actually pretty impressed at how much you can this. Again, this is basically a Stellaris mod. It's just a Stellaris mod that adds a bunch of skin to it as far as just theming, which whatever. There's a mod for Stellaris that already does that, and it completely rewrites every single quest and event chain in the entire game. And a lot of that is also just theming, because mostly you do a thing, you dedicate a science ship for long enough and stuff happens. It's a thing. But also the back end tweaking, from at least a cursory glance, again, I haven't played as much of this as I have Stellaris, feels like you want to do different things, and that's really cool to me. And it's interesting comparing it to the existing Stellaris Total Conversion mod, which mostly doesn't do that. The Stellaris Total Conversion mod, which I've also played a decent amount of, is Stellaris but more complex. It has something like twice as many base resources as Stellaris does, and hyper emphasizes trading for them, and
it does encourage you at least a little bit to not conquer everyone you see.
Yeah, it's got this very, very complicated and honestly super hacky Federation function, which is sort of neat because it means that you can theoretically play multiplayer as a single faction simply by dividing up resources in a sensible way, and you need to know that. But it also has just no tutorial whatsoever, and it's not really interested in telling you how to play, whereas this is much more interested in telling you how to play because it's a standalone game. But it really it speaks volumes about Stellaris that you can basically tweak some numbers in a spreadsheet and have a game that's completely different. And it really makes me think about how many games can feel so different simply because you opted to set the back end a little differently. It makes me think of Destiny, and I know Bella's going to tell me that the way I like to play, the way I always wanted to play Destiny is in fact possible if your gear is good enough.
Yeah, it is.
But that isn't. But the game does not present that to you. It's not like I'm choosing that as an option. It's eventually I get to do this, and that's numbers in a spreadsheet. That's tweaking a variety of numbers such that, compared to, say, Anthem, where if I'm playing a different, Anthem takes the same broad approach as Destiny as far as class theming, but like the actual functionalities of them, like at a base level, was very different.
Yeah, I mean, Destiny at its core was a shoot 'em up, not a space magic game.
Yeah.
But like, had they tweaked the space magic to have lower cooldowns, but maybe do less damage and not be treated as an ultimate, it would have been a totally different feeling game.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, like, you're kind of outlining one of my core problems with Diablo 4 in its current state is I have moved away from wanting to do a builder spender scenario. And most ARPGs allow you to eventually get to a point where you're just doing the fun thing. You're just spending. And that game doesn't. Like, you have to use builders. And there's no way around it. Like, all of the builders feel boring and awful. And as a result, like, they're not a fun button to push. But you have to pay the tax that is getting enough resource to do the fun thing. And to be fair, like, that complaint that I have about Diablo 4 is exactly the complaint you had about Destiny.
Yeah. And it's interesting how much, like, and again, I spend a lot of time in spreadsheets about video games in my life, both for my actual job and for fun. But it's always interesting to me, the, like, hey, the reason that all of these builds happen, the reason that all of this metagame occurs, the reason that you play a game a certain way and a game is about playing a certain way boils down to numbers on a spreadsheet. And it's real easy to change numbers in a spreadsheet.
Well, and so often, like, builds are designed to fix the flaws in the game system or exploit the flaws in the game system.
I was going to go that direction.
To make a thing that's funner than the original state.
Which might be why they get changed.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but, like, also, maybe your design was bad from the start.
But if the developers have a vision,
dude,
they can't change the vision.
I want to.
EverQuest has been a long time ago.
I want to hit every vision with a flamethrower.
I think that it is important to have a vision for a game during production.
Yes.
And basically, like, in concept, what alpha is for you to take that vision and put it in front of some players and figure out whether or not your vision makes any sense.
Right.
When your vision encounters the real world, the real world wins.
Well, I mean, and this is kind of the problem. Like, I don't know if we've talked about this on the show directly, but it's a topic that I've had in my head for a while, that all live service games are awful for at least a year. Because, like, it takes a year for the vision to mutate into a product that people actually want to play. I mean, because, like, if you look at New World, okay? New World just released their first expansion. I've not spent any time playing it, but the last time I did, it was a much better game today than it was at launch. Like, it's so much better because they've tweaked all the problem things that didn't make any sense in the first place. Like, the simple things like the ability to have storage in every town and just draw from them forever without having to spend a limited resource that was a pain in the ass to get in the first place. Like, little things like that just have improved that game. Like, it's a much better game today. Problem is like, it doesn't have the hype of 1 million players that it had at launch, or 1 million concurrent players at launch, but it's a better game today than it was, 2 years ago when it came out.
2 years ago. Yep.
And it was a better game a year after the fact than it was at launch as well. And like it's continued to just have an upward trajectory. Diablo 3, it's kind of a shitty game at launch.
That one took 2 years as well.
And it was a steady trajectory upward as they jettisoned their darling ideas and moved in a direction that the players actually wanted. Like I have a feeling in a year and a half, Diablo 4, if it maintains, any focus from the studio, will become a great game. Like it's heading in that trajectory. It's just got a long ways to go. It's like all live service games suck when they first release.
Is that restricted to live service games though? Like Diablo 2 definitely was a better game than Diablo 3 at launch. But most of the fond memories people have of that game are with the expansion.
I liked Diablo 2 after the expansion a lot better than I liked Diablo 2 at launch.
Like this is not a modern phenomenon for games that are intended to have extended play.
But also internetworked. It turns out lab is not like production. So your clean, pristine game that you are testing with in a dev environment without the gremlins that are the player base ruining it.
Well, it's the same problem. I can't test my own code ever. Code I write needs to be tested by someone else because the sheer act of me knowing how it's supposed to work is going to keep me from doing the things that are going to mercilessly break it.
Yeah.
This is also why you have beta readers, why you have,
So like, the initial design, I think, gets you to launch, but at that point, kind of have to adapt what the service is going to look like going forward based on the reaction of the people that are actually playing it.
Yeah, and I think that's where there's a bunch of space for games like Star Trek Infinite, where if you have a game that's big enough that is going down a particular direction, but it could have gone down a different direction.
Yeah, fork it.
Yeah, like Star Trek Infinite is a fork of Stellaris, and I think it would be really easy to dismiss it as, okay, sure, it's a Stellaris clone, and in a lot of ways it is, but also because it's making different decisions about the direction it wants to go. Like, there's a bunch of games that I would play really happily if they had chosen even a very slightly different direction. Hello, Sea of Thieves.
Right, exactly. I was just going to bring up Sea of Thieves. They're finally going to give the ability to have PVE servers.
As long as you don't mind not ever being able to get to, max level.
Wait,
Whatever.
why?
Yep.
because they didn't actually get it. They just said they did.
Because
oh man,
yeah.
That's some hot bullshit.
Yep.
I'm just gonna say.
Somebody
You were
had
so
to
close.
program that. You had to code that. That decision, you had to make that decision. It was easier to not make that decision.
But you see, there are titles and things attached to getting to max level and max reputation with factions.
Yeah.
And if you can get those things without PvPing,
screw
then it
you
devalues
and your dumbass
them
titles.
So I'm still not playing that game apparently.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
I am so sad.
I am heartbroken because like I was fully on board with doing everybody in AggroChat play some Sea of Thieves and eats bananas the wrong way.
No,
I had
Sounded so fun.
We did try this before. I do attract all the gankers, as it turns out.
I saw the initial announcement. I was so excited, and then I looked into it, and I'm angrier than I was to start with.
So what's the limitation?
You can be level 40.
Out of what?
50.
Because getting to max level gives you stuff.
And it's apparently very specifically because they don't want to devalue the titles.
I hate that entire mentality. The WoW devs have that mentality too. I hate it so much.
Can they just take
Not
the titles
grant
out?
the titles?
Like,
just
I don't give
make
crap
a
about
different
the
title.
titles.
Yeah. The irony? Like, the irony is, having played a decent amount of Sea of Thieves, I'm also like...
What do levels even do in that game?
Not a lot. like,
okay, but here's the thing: is like, okay, we can't be an outlier because when that was announced, there was joyous resounding in all of my social medias.
Yeah, there was so
and
much
if you
excitement.
look at it, like, okay, so we're 6 adults right here that would have spent money on this game.
Yep.
I already spent money on this game, actually.
There was a Monkey Island crossover in this game, and I still did not play it. Can I tell you how difficult that was to do?
Yeah.
So angry.
The thing is, too, even if those levels don't actually matter that much, just hearing that they
Yeah, it means that they don't
the
get
players
it. They just don't get it.
to this point makes me uninterested.
They want our money, but they don't actually like respect us in any way. Is what it tells me.
And this is the thing. Again, this is me, like, you know, game dev hat on, numbers in a spreadsheet. Like, I'm not even convinced it's that they don't care. I think they just chose the simplest solution and didn't think about the player impact. Because, like, having played Sea of, I had to, like, bring up a page just now to refresh myself on what levels even do in that game, and they don't mean all that much. And I know that the devs are like, oh, hey, this is a super easy way to not alienate our PvP crowd because these levels don't actually matter. And
I feel like they haven't yet learned how much their PvP crowd is loud but small.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a problem with anybody making an online video game.
Yeah. Basically, no devs have learned this, it seems, ever in the history of MMOs.
Some have learned.
Some have. It took them a long time. Raf Koster looks back at his statements from decades ago and says, yeah, maybe I was wrong. It's crazy.
Well, I mean, it's really easy for, like, a game designer to look at a game and say, oh man, this is so much richer if players can influence each other. Mm-hmm. Because board games where players don't interact with each other are boring.
Yeah. No, like, like, in a vacuum, it sounds like the right choice. Like, that's how you make a living world that actually, where things feel real and there's real interaction. And
but the thing
players
is
are
players
sociopaths.
Don't want real world consequences in their video game.
Well, and on the other side, you've got, it's really easy on the, like, games business side to say all of the games that make the most money are PvP
are competitive.
Games, are competitive PvP games. And so these two things together, if you never look any deeper, I understand how you get to this design.
Yeah, distorts everything.
But there's a different, like, PvP is not created equal everywhere.
Yeah, match PvP versus world PvP.
Versus persistent,
Yeah,
like,
persistent world PvP. Two
having
completely
a persistent
different
character
things.
is different than having matches.
Yeah.
And there has never, ever been a meaningfully successful, large-scale, open-world PvP game.
Yep.
Come at me, people who like Rust or Eve or Tarkov. Your numbers are 2 or 3 orders of magnitude smaller than, like, a baseline AAA single-player game.
I mean, I think one can go back and just look at, you know, Ultima Online was reasonably successful, and then they finally split the servers, and it became much more successful.
I was like, has no one read the Trammel white paper?
Yeah, like,
Trammel ruined UO. Don't you know?
Let's be clear here. UO wasn't mildly successful pre-Trammel. Trammel happened because UO needed to save itself.
It saved it as it was dying. It was successful for a while and then started going down, as many MMOs do.
I mean, like, I played Dark Age of Camelot on a PvE server, and it was consistently the highest pop server.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the thing about,
why wouldn't I? I got access to 3 times the content with one character.
And the thing about what was it? The thing about Dark Age of Camelot's PvP is that it was compartmentalized. There was a space that you went to.
Yeah, ESO is also great for this.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Well, and that's the core problem I think that failed with Warhammer Online is they did not keep it compartmentalized. Like there were borderlands, but the higher level you got, the more PvP bled into the PvE.
Yeah,
so you couldn't
eventually
just play
couldn't avoid it.
PvE.
Well, and I say no devs have learned this lesson, but some clearly have. I mean, look at Fallout 76. They realized that
Eventually.
people, yeah, it took them a while, but they realized that not only do people want it to have like to be able to play on their own, they'll pay a premium for that, and then also that maybe people want to just be able to opt out of PvE even if they are playing with other people. And you know what? I've been playing that game for a while. I almost always just log into a regular server. I have been shot at exactly once, and it was because I wanted to get rid of a wanted level I got accidentally, and it took like an hour before anybody did it. Nobody wants to PvP in that game. That's not what people are there for.
Well, but also, games, like you mentioned, games are more interesting when players are engaging. Does anyone actually do PvP and PoE in Path of Exile?
I have no clue.
I
but
don't
the
even know
impression
how it
I've
works.
ever
I
gotten
don't.
is no.
Yeah, I
There's
know
a
it
PvP
exists.
arena
I
in
ignore it.
Sarn, and you can also enter PvP from Act 2.
But
I have never done either of these things. I don't know if anybody does them.
I interact with players all the time. I really care that I'm in a massively multiplayer online RPG when I'm playing PoE, even though they don't call it that. Because
It's because you're interacting with them economically.
That's why there's an
But
economy.
that's
Yep.
exactly the point. Like, there's other ways to interact with people other than making their day worse.
Yeah, maybe
You-
murder shouldn't be the primary method of interaction.
Yeah, you can also interact with people to make their days better. It turns out people really like it when they interact with other people and their day gets better.
Although, like, players in that game are super suspicious of giving away stuff in Lions, whatever, the first area. Because, like, I've tried to, like, dump some reasonably decent starter gear on low-level characters, and nobody would accept the trade.
I mean, honestly, that's probably because everyone's a little bit worried about scams, and they don't.
Yeah.
Especially if they're new, they might not realize that PoE is actually pretty good at scam prevention.
Yeah. Like, so Zizarin was trying to give somebody a headhunter the other day. And I think it took him like 20 or so people before finally somebody accepted the trade.
I mean, I'd be super suspicious.
Me too.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Did you mean to click on me? This must be a mistake.
I don't want to take anyone's headhunter accidentally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that would be a lot of it for me. Not even a worry about a scam. Just like, this has got to be a mistake. No. Because if I take it, then he'll like realize that he gave it to the wrong person and want it back.
Well, so what's surreal is like, okay, so the trade economy is kind of obtuse.
Kind
Takes
of.
a little bit to get into, but like also it is shockingly honest. Like there's been a couple times where like I traded too much chaos to a person because like I'd messaged 5 people and I didn't remember who I was who actually got the sale. And I've had people open a trade window back up just to hand me like 2 chaos that was over.
I mean, grinding your games enforces this shit. So that's why.
I just expected it to be way more cutthroat than it actually is.
Honestly, I list a lot of my older gear at lower level, at probably a little bit less chaos than I need to, just because it's like, hey, if you want to play Hex Blast, like, I'm not using this gear now. This gear served me well. I hope it serves someone else well. So there's definitely a bit of like, hey, we're all in this together. This game is brutal and unfair and wants to grind you down. And that's what I want from a game where like it encourages players to work together.
At least on some level.
Yeah, you can make the world be a bigger enemy than the players.
Yeah.
And also, then everyone is encouraged to try and keep people playing, because the more people playing your game, the better it is for everyone else who's playing. Like, if more people playing the game somehow makes it easier, like, that's the cool thing with Trade League, I think, is, like, I'm looking forward to doing the Bell League, but Trade League is cool because it's, like, kind of a big collective project where it's, like, the more people are here, the more trade going on, the more likely I'm going to get a really optimal piece of gear that helps me get further. And
Still kind of true even for a private league.
It's definitely still true for a private league.
Right, because like what's going to end up having to happen is that we're all going to kind of have to do a niche.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, 'cause, like,
I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to play because I don't want to overlap too much with other people and be fighting over the same gear.
Again, if somebody sees Chorus Walkers, I'm immediately switching my build to a build that uses them. They're not a common item. I don't expect to see them at all during this private league experiment. But I might run Ritual in case I do. The other thing is, it's unclear what's going to be on challenges next league, which sort of it affects what people choose to run.
I'm running Ritual right now just to try and knock out the achievement or the challenge. I actually like Ritual a lot other than the time it adds to the map. You know, because like the optimal way of running Ritual is to do it as the last thing. Go kill the boss, then go do your rituals because you'll have your boss on every ritual.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like
I thought the boss only respawned as part of a ritual if the ritual was actually like where the boss died.
No,
Okay.
things you kill as part of
I
a ritual
misunderstood.
show up in all subsequent rituals. So if you do that as your first one,
You like the optimum path for Ritual is do not touch Ritual until you've killed your boss, and then go back and do your rituals last thing.
Well, that's good to know.
Like that's how you end up maximizing the favor. Because it becomes really trivial to get like 7,000, 8,000 favor on a map.
but that also encourages you to do maps where you can go to the boss rather soon. Like Mesa. Mesa's such a good map.
Well, and City Square is great too, because like it doesn't matter where you spawn in there, it's real fast to get to the boss. It's in the dead center of the map.
I do find it funny how different map layouts are just good for different mechanics, mostly.
Mhm.
I've been complaining about getting Legion in tight spaces where it's terrible, but
You know
getting
what's
Blight in
really-
tight spaces is
I was
wonderful.
gonna say,
Yeah.
Blight in tight spaces is amazing.
Phantasmagoria is good for that. It's just one big long tunnel.
Yeah, Legion and Blight are amazing in Dune.
Blight is really good in Phantasmagoria. Yes, I've done that a bunch. I've been doing a lot of Blight, but yes, it turns out you don't have to make a game about PvP to make it really important to interact with other players.
But back to the whole thing of like just shifting the rule set a little bit. I have been shocked at how popular hardcore WoW has been lately. I know it's a new thing and the new hasn't worn off, but like that is not anything I would have ever predicted.
What is hardcore
Yeah.
WoW?
If you die, your character dies.
Okay.
Certain abilities are not allowed because they are too out of band.
Like
But yeah.
what?
That's just what? Because I didn't know about that part.
I think Soulstones, Paladin Bubble, I think.
Oh,
Things
what
like
about,
that.
What about Vanish?
That I don't know. I only know about the ones that I do know because of like reading blog posts talking about some
Yeah.
of it.
But it's basically classic WoW, but if you die, you are your characters, gets a memorial page.
Okay, specifically, Soulstone Resurrection is not allowed.
Sure.
Well, the preview for this page is much more useful than Paladins aren't allowed to bubble hearth. Shamans can't use Ankh.
The Ankh and Soulstone ones kind of make sense because,
Yeah.
you're kind of dead before you use those.
Something about Light of a Loon.
Oh,
I'm
that
actually-
thing.
I'm actually curious. Is there any of the abilities that give you instant speed casting on something?
Okay, yeah, here we go. Soulstone, Ankh, Bubble Hearth, Light of a Loon plus Hearthstone, and you cannot use Auto Unstuck to like teleport yourself to a city. So yeah.
Oh, is Light of a Loon what makes the cast instant?
Light of a Loon is an immunity from an item that you
Mhm.
get in Duskwood from a Alliance-specific quest that you think you can only get one of. If
Yes.
I'm remembering this correctly. It's a very weird thing.
It's a 10-second immunity. And yeah, you can only ever get one.
But speaking of that, there may be a day when it doesn't feel awful to care about Blizzard things.
We'll see.
Because the Microsoft deal closed.
It
I
sure
don't-
did.
Yeah, it sure
We'll see.
closed. We'll see.
Yeah. I am curious to see how fast those titles migrate to Game Pass.
I am curious about that part, yes.
Because the Bethesda titles made it pretty quick.
I just know I was reminded by on Mastodon that Activision has held the Infocom properties for a long time now. So now Microsoft is going to own all of Infocom stuff. Maybe somebody at Microsoft loves old text adventures and will actually do something with these. It would be nice.
I mean, I would be fine if they just got released on Game Pass.
That's an option.
I guess in other Blizzard news, this is the first year ever, BlizzCon-wise, to not sell out.
Oof.
Yeah.
End of an era.
I do, I know that ESO was kind of different because you could always play ESO by the time that deal went through. I do wonder if there will end up being a proper free-to-play version of World of Warcraft that's on Game Pass.
Feels like such a weird idea, but yeah, I mean, maybe.
That seems like an easy sell.
I feel like that is also kind of... World of Warcraft is kind of feels small potatoes in this whole thing. Is anyone worried about World of Warcraft?
That's not what
Regulators? No, they don't care.
So I feel like this is going to be a thing that happens because one of the major features of that last expansion that came out was full controller support.
I mean, that's a good thing.
I would not be shocked if we end up with World of Warcraft on Xbox. But do I care about World of Warcraft anymore? No, I don't. I only really care because I'm a quote-unquote gaming pundit.
Gaming influencer, that's the proper term.
I don't influence anyone.
Objectively incorrect.
That's
that is the absolute bald-faced lie.
I make poor decisions and occasionally people follow me.
I mean,
that's called influencing.
Yep.
We're starting to get a little short on time. I don't know how long your XR and Eater experience is going to take, Kodra.
Oh, we don't need to really talk about it tonight.
Okay.
I was just trying to fill out a schedule.
Yeah.
And then we decided to go really long on some topics, and that was really great. Got some good conversation.
I am happy that you have now made it through a Maven 10-way and fully unlocked Eater and XR. Oh, you've not done it? Okay.
I've not made it through a Maven 10-way. Also, that sounds really inappropriate, Bell.
Yep. Really.
Yes, well, I think in this particular case, that name is fully appropriate.
It is, yeah.
So I have a lot of DPS, and while I didn't necessarily understand the mechanics, it turns out you can kind of just burst down Eater. So I only died once.
Yeah, so I am absolutely expecting that you'll carry all of us through, our last 2 Voidstones in Bell League.
Yeah, so that's gonna be. You've got to understand. I also have some gear that is gonna be hard to get in Bell League.
Yeah. You can probably get a Sandstorm. The Cloak of Flame's gonna be a little harder.
Interesting.
I've had Cloak of Flames drop. I just haven't seen one this league.
They're not common.
But I have absolutely had them drop before, and I've had multiple drop in the same league.
And this is why Bell League is going to work, because we'll all benefit from Bell Luck.
I'm going to go into a mine somewhere and walk out with treasures.
Bell's going to delve.
I'm probably just going to do a bunch of tower defense.
Man, I do love tower defense. It turns out
I didn't like tower defense, but it turns out I like tower defense quite a lot.
It turns out that I am a tower.
That is also an option, yes.
On this build, did you apply the towers deal 300% damage and you deal barely anything?
No.
That only works in maps. Doesn't work in blighted maps. That only works in normal maps.
So that's
does not work where you would really want it to. Where you
Yeah.
actually are doing the tower defense.
I should do a blighted map. I've not actually done a blighted map. My assorted bow builds are really good at blight, so I should do an actual blighted map.
But I do need to stress
The thing to
that
keep in mind is that you need to not panic, because if you run across the screen to take care of a different problem, you just cause more problems.
Yeah, no, you're kind of always focusing on the center.
It does worry me that I'm gonna have a Lucy in the Chocolate Factory moment and freak out.
Yes, that happens. That's the failure condition. But anyway,
I will say a thing that really hammered home how much more tanky Bell is than me. If a Eater orb or if an Exarch orb hit me, it was death instantly, full to zero.
I can take no more than 2, maybe 3 of them at once.
Holy moly, Bell! That's unreasonable.
I'm sure the same is true with Thalen's RF build.
Take one.
Yes.
Most
yes.
can probably take one.
Yeah, I did very mediocre at dodging orbs and never got close to death.
Right. Like Shrek, the problem with Shrek was just being slowed in the swamp.
Yeah.
Like, I was never going to die.
It's just like, okay, which way do I need to go? I'm so slow. Oh, God. Yeah.
No, I'm very squishy, but I do bring big DPS.
I've had to learn that I should just lean into my instincts more, because I now know what classes are really good at being tanky, and I should just build all the things I want to play off of those classes.
Here's a hint. It's the ones that start on the right side, on the left side of the tree.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, okay, but Champion is super tanky.
That's close enough, because Witch is definitely the opposite for Champion.
Yeah, so like this week I decided I'm going to recreate my Lightning Arrow build, but as a Champion, and see how it feels. It is infinitely more enjoyable for me, and it doesn't feel like I'm any less killy.
I mean, you almost certainly are.
I'm sure I am, but like I don't know that I am in a way that matters, because everything that I could one-shot, I can still one-shot, and bosses still kind of suck. Like it sucked on the other one too.
That's fair, because that's not a build with very good bosses.
Like but I have 80% evasion, 80% physical reduction from armor, full spell suppression, 20% less damage thanks to permanent stacks of fortify, permanent onslaught.
Oh, you got the belt too?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I had one laying around, so.
Nice.
But yeah, like, so it's like, it's stupid. Like it's almost as tanky as my Guardian.
Have you tried just swapping in Ice Shot for that build?
I've not. I've played with Tornado Shot, and I don't like Tornado Shot.
Tornado Shot asks for different things. Ice Shot and Lightning Air ask for almost exactly the same things.
Yeah.
And Val Ice Shot is good.
Okay, yeah, no, like I've seen the Starburst pattern of Val Ice Shot, or technically asterisk, because it like goes out from the middle, doesn't it?
It's the one that it summons a bunch of clones for you.
Oh, well, there's one of them that looks like it's an ice.
Val Lightning Arrow, I think, is the one you're talking about.
No, because Val Lightning Arrow is I am going to shoot a bunch of arrows that just zigzag all over the freaking place.
Right, okay. No, Val Ice Shot summons a bunch of clones of you, and they kind of just barrage down single targets.
Okay. Well, there's one of the Val skills that's a bow skill where you shoot the boss, and then, like, an asterisk of paths branches out of the boss and paints the floor with something. And it may have just been that somebody was using an ice MTX when I saw it. Anyway, I just don't think I'm the right person for glass cannon builds. They never
That's
make
fine.
me happy.
I should eventually try playing a tanky build to see how I feel about it, but I kind of love this thing.
You are not going to find a tanky build that has that much damage.
No, you're not.
That's fine, but I should
unless you're
try
abusing a mechanic that's probably going to get patched to the next patch.
Is that Bone Shatter?
No.
There have been builds, especially some of the totem builds last league, that were oddly tanky, but also insta-killed everything.
There are ways to build slightly more tanky right side characters as well. There's some ridiculous evasion thing stacking you can do.
I'm trying to be tanky enough.
Exactly.
Although I got blown up doing a heist, and so I'm definitely learning to not stand in front of doors when they open.
Mm-hmm.
That is the number one thing I told you.
It's an important lesson to learn.
Yep.
To be truthful, that goes with opening any door. So many things can shotgun you.
And I am a perfect build for dealing with those doors getting opened, because I can throw a bunch of mines in front of that door.
Yep. That's why I like the bow totem builds, because you could just drop your totems and then step away and open the door and then let them do their thing.
I know bow mines are a thing. I'm tempted to try those at some point.
Problem with that is you still have to equip a bow.
I would assume that kind of build doesn't really care about the damage of the bow.
It
I
does.
mean, depends.
Oh, it would? Okay.
The one on build of the week we actually had a bow mine build on build of the week this league. It was explosive arrow, and it did not care about the damage of the bow, but that's because the bow was Widow Hail.
Okay. Yeah, so
So it was the quiver.
yeah, you're stacking all your damage on a quiver and then just doubling that. Anyway, that was a rabbit trail.
Always.
Yep.
Yeah. Any final thoughts? Hopefully,
Messing with a build is my default state of being.
Yeah, no, it is. Like,
and I am the opposite. That was a funny conversation. Perfecting a build is my default state of being.
see,
Maybe we talk about that one next time.
Yeah,
Let's talk about that next time.
Yeah. All right. Hopefully, you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you again next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See ya.